I think I asked a similar question to Ben Shapiro. Do you worry that this style of presentation can turn you from being, a deeply thoughtful, objective political thinker to somebody who is just a partisan hack or partisan, what's a good word? Talking head?
Do you mean with regard to Twitter or the format of my show in general?
So Twitter for now. Let's start with Twitter for now. And can you silo your style of communication on Twitter from being a virus that affects your mind?
Right. I don't have deep thoughts about the Twitter component beyond, I think, across all sorts of disciplines. This is not the best way to most effectively solve problems and figure out solutions to complex issues.
You're talking about Twitter.
Right now I'm talking about Twitter.
Yes.
That being said, I think all of us, to some degree, have to adapt our content to the platform that we're using. In the same way that what I post to YouTube is different than what I post to TikTok, what I post to Twitter is also different. Do I think Twitter has been an unmitigated good for society? No. Have I chosen to step into Twitter as one of the ways in which I get my message out with the good and the bad? Yes. And I think that there is a deep conversation to be had there. I think zooming out a little bit in terms of what I do, and I was hoping this would come up because I think it's really interesting. I will often get emails from people who say two things. I will get you would have such a bigger audience if you did X type emails. Mm-hmm. And usually they are plays to sensationalism, mm-hmm. salacious and titillating content, more pop culture stuff, etc. On the other hand, it's folks who say, listen, what you're doing really isn't as serious as it could be. And it seems like you could do something more serious. And you should consider doing deep dives. Once it was do a deep dive into Calvin Coolidge. And I was like, nobody will watch that. So it's not by accident that my show is the way it is, right? In an hour, I'm thinking of all the platforms I'm on and I'm saying, okay, I want to do a relatively deep dive on the federal budget. And I want to talk about some of the political tomfoolery going on within the post office. And I'm going to do a segment about the wacky rally where Trump said crazy things and made up 3 words and said he endorsed a candidate who's named it, right? I'm crafting that in total to find a balance between let's build this audience as much as I can in order to have a bigger base to get my message out there and include the more serious stuff with the hope that there's a little bit of something for everyone. And I'm finding a balance between those two sides of the spectrum. It's a deliberate thing. And I'm aware that if I were producing my show 50 years ago, the balance would probably be different and it would probably change again. If the show was audio only rather than having all these video platforms, it would also be different. But it's a decision that's proactively made to try to get the best and most out of the hour that I'm creating every day.
Well, it just feels like there's an entire machine fed by Twitter and journalism that wants to divide people, and the drama of that division, highlighting the partisan division. The drama of that division feels like it's a tension with objective, clear thinking sometimes. And so I worry that there's a drug to it. There's too much fun to mock ridiculous people on the other side.
I think you're right about that. And the fact that that is true, to me, supports, I've talked with my audience about, like the old food pyramid, which I guess was like wrong, but let's imagine that there was a pyramid that made sense.
What's at the bottom? Bread?
I think like whole grains, maybe? Okay. I don't remember. It's been a while.
Sugar's on the top? Okay.
Junk food is at the very top. Okay. I'm very open with my audience. The vast majority of what I do is the top of that pyramid. And I tell people very openly, I don't consume a lot of the type of content I produce. And I think it's really important to, as a base, be doing critical thinking, epistemology, how do we believe the things we believe, basics about the world. After that, reading history, economics, philosophy, etc. After that, now we're getting into current events. I would mostly be looking at consuming primary source reporting, things like Associated Press, whatever. I know everybody will have a different list of what counts there. After that is when I'd say indulge in some of the commentary type stuff that I do. If you find that I'm thoughtful enough to make it into that, but I'm very open. And really what I try to do on my show often is, in being that at the top of the pyramid, tell people there's all this other stuff that should be forming your foundation that I hope you're consuming in addition to just watching me. And I'm very open with my audience about that.
What about the shape, the dynamics, the characteristics of your audience? Is there some degree to which you're, through mocking maybe Republicans, that there's a lean to that audience, and then you become captured by the audience? Do you worry about the audience capture?
I worry about it. I'm relatively comfortable that it's not shaping the program to a great degree, in the sense that at this point, I have a pretty good sense of the things I can say that will upset what I might call my core audience. You know, one of the interesting things, just to briefly go back to the Twitter thing, was those people who were furious with me on Twitter and they contacted my advertisers, and some advertisers dropped me, and on and on and on. None of them are actually in my audience. None of them are regular consumers of my audience. They were kind of weaponized against me by people who said, hey, look at this. The people who follow Candace Owens on Twitter, other than for their kind of shock value, they're not in my audience. And with my core audience, I know there are things I can talk about that will generate displeasure, I guess you could say, with my audience. Sometimes when I touch the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that will happen. Sometimes on vaccines. There's a portion of my audience that is more generally skeptical of vaccines. Sometimes on some foreign policy issues. Or, you know, I'm not a big fan of Marianne Williamson nor Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s challenges to Joe Biden, not because I love Joe Biden, but because I don't consider them to be the most serious challengers. I know there's people in my audience who don't like that. They get mad at me about that. And I'm totally okay with that, and that tension with my core audience. So in that sense, I don't feel as though I've had that audience capture take place, but I know it can happen, and I'm very open to being told ways in which it may be happening without me noticing.